When I was in high school, I have to be honest, I really wasn't trying hard whatsoever. And I think that a lot of you may connect with that. You go through middle school, you barely try, maybe you study before the night before the exam, probably not. And then you take the exam and then you get an A, right? And then in high school, it's sort of like the same thing, but you put in a little more effort. You study right the day before the exam, take the exam, and you get an A, right? And the thing is, when you're like this, when you're quote unquote smart, right? You get good grades without really trying that hard. It really can become your downfall in the future. And so there's a phrase that my mom kept on telling me in Chinese, and the phrase is literally 小聪明. And what it basically literally translates into is small intelligence. Basically small smarts. Like, you are relying on this basic intelligence in order to get you through everything. You don't need to work for anything. You just rely on your base intelligence, right? And from that, you just do well, And the point that my mom was trying to make was that you can't get everywhere with that. You're going to hit a wall someday. Your base intelligence will not be able to compensate for the demand of the task. And when that happens, you'll fail. And you'll fail hard. And that is why being smart is a curse. You can reach levels where normally other people require more effort than you do, right? But when it comes time to go even further than that, you're actually behind. You're behind because you've never studied. You've never put in as much effort. You've never learned how to do things the quote-unquote proper way. You've never had to struggle. And so, when you first encounter this, perhaps it's in college, perhaps it's in high school, perhaps it's in grad school, right? When you first encounter this, because you're that much older, you've built this identity around being a smart kid. And what is a smart kid? A smart kid is someone who doesn't try very much and still does well, right? And you've built up this identity that you're a smart kid, that you don't need to work very well, you don't need to work very hard, and yet you'll still get good grades. And so when you're confronted by a challenge that requires you to do more, to put in more effort, you don't, because that would mean that you're contradicting your identity of a smart kid. And this ends up with you performing less than you could have done. And it's a curse. And on this point of being a smart kid, I think I've noticed a lot that smart kids don't raise their hands, to answer questions. Like, the professor asks a question to the class, what's the answer? And smart kids don't raise their hands, even though they know the answer, even though they've done the calculation in their head 3 times already, but they still don't raise their hands to answer. Why is that? Because it challenges their identity. If you get it wrong, right? If you raise your hand and you answer and you get it wrong, that challenges the identity that you're a smart kid, right? Because smart kids don't get things wrong, or they seldom do, right? Smart kids get most things right, if not all things right. And so, smart kids, because they identify themselves as being smart, will seldom raise their hands in order to answer a question, unless they are absolutely sure that their answer is correct. That's the only case, right? Because if you're not absolutely sure that you are correct, that your answer is correct, you stand the risk of being wrong, and therefore challenging your identity, challenging this identity that you've built up for years of your life. You have all these people telling you, you have your parents, you have your cousins, you have your friends, everyone's telling you that you're such a smart kid. You're so smart. And when you're young, You take it all in like a sponge. You build this identity that I'm smart. Everyone else is telling me that I'm smart, so I'm smart. What does smart mean? Well, I think it means that, to be smart, I have to not try and still do really well. And you internalize that, and that becomes who you are. And then the next thing you know, you fail. So, with this in mind, how does one resolve this? If you believe you're a smart kid, if you're in this dilemma where, maybe you haven't hit that threshold, maybe you haven't hit that wall yet, but you want to change before that, or if you have hit that wall many, many times, and your self-esteem and self-identity has been just thrown out the window every single time, right? And then you've slowly recovered back to being a smart kid, right? It took months, took maybe years, but you slowly became that smart kid again, only to face another obstacle and just get blown back again. How does one resolve this? The first, I think, is the most obvious, which is simply to change your identity. To stop identifying yourself as this smart kid. In other words, it's basically to encounter enough obstacles to rigidly tell you that you're no longer smart. You faced so many challenges that you can't identify yourself as being a smart kid anymore. Right? And once that happens, once you stop identifying yourself as a smart kid, then you can actually put in the effort. Then you can actually grow. Then you can actually become better. It's ironic because we think of smart people as static. They were just born smart. They didn't grow there. They didn't develop to become smart. They were just born like that. But in reality, most smart people weren't born like that. Most smart people, the ones we deem as smart, right, developed into it. They worked to become that person. Now, of course, they probably had some natural ability, right? I'm not saying they didn't, but they still worked towards becoming who they were today. They weren't born with this innate ability. It was developed over long periods of time, over years, over decades. That's how they became the smart individual they are now. And so the sooner you confront obstacles, the sooner that you're confronted with the fact that you aren't smart anymore, the faster you'll be able to bounce back in a way. The faster you'll be able to adopt a new mindset, a new identity of who you are. I'm no longer smart, but I can become smarter. I can work to become better. That is the mindset that you want in order to become a smart person. It's kind of backwards given our society's definition of a smart individual. But that's how smart individuals are created. They are built. They are made. They weren't born. Unless you're talking about the crazy geniuses, right? Unless you're talking about the crazy geniuses, okay, fine. But you aren't one of them. And so if you have this mindset that you are a smart kid, know that you're at a disadvantage further in life. It's like you've peaked earlier than other people, right? But your peak is smaller than other people's peak when they peak. So like you peak early. Let's say you peak to here, right? And other people, they're still down here, but then they start peaking and their peak is higher, right? You got a head start, but that doesn't mean you'll win the race. So if you want to become better, to become smarter in a way, you have to get rid of this identity that you're a smart person, you're a smart individual, that you were born this way, that this is who you are. And instead adopt the concept that the smart individual is developed. The smart individual learns every single day. The smart individual becomes smarter over time because of the work that they put into it. And with that, that is today's video. If you've enjoyed, drop a like, comment, subscribe. turn on those notifications, and check out my 2 books down below, and I will see you next time.